The observation deck of the Concordance offered a view that still took Arya Chen's breath away, even after 6 months aboard. Stars stretched endlessly in every direction, and the massive diplomatic vessel cut through space like a needle through silk. She stood with her hands clasped behind her back, watching a distant nebula paint the darkness in shades of purple and gold. Interpreter Chen, "Your presence is required in Conference Room 7. The voice belonged to Lieutenant Crix," a Velaran whose crystalline features never seemed to show anything resembling respect. Arya turned slowly, meeting the alien's multifaceted eyes with a calm smile. "Of course, Lieutenant. I'll be there immediately." Crix's mandibles clicked in what might have been dismissal or annoyance. Arya had learned to read 17 different species' body language during her training, but the Valarans still sometimes puzzled her. The lieutenant walked away without another word, clearly expecting Arya to follow like an obedient pet. She did follow, but her mind was already working through possibilities. The Vrask Dominion delegation had been aboard for 3 days now, and the negotiations were not going well. Captain Thelnox, the insectoid commander of the Concordance, seemed convinced that his reputation alone would bring the Vrask to terms. Arya knew better. She had listened to every word the Vrask spoke, in both official sessions and in the corridors when they thought no one important was listening. The Vrask were planning something. Their words in Standard Galactic said one thing, but the subtle shifts in their own language told a different story entirely. Conference Room 7 was crowded when Arya entered. Captain Thelnox dominated the head of the table, his 6 legs folded beneath him in a posture of assumed authority. Commander Xiphus, the reptilian second officer, sat to his right, scales gleaming under the soft lights. The Vrask delegation occupied the opposite side, 3 massive warriors in ceremonial armor that barely concealed the weapons beneath. "Ah, Interpreter Chen," Captain Thelnox said without looking at her. "Please position yourself near the speakers. We are about to resume discussions regarding mining rights in the Korvax sector." Arya moved to her designated spot, a small cushioned platform near the wall. It was positioned to give her a clear view of everyone while keeping her physically separate from the real participants. She was furniture with a function, nothing more. The captain had made that clear on her first day aboard. The lead Vrask negotiator, a scarred veteran named Hrokhtar, began speaking in Standard Galactic. His voice was rough, like gravel grinding against stone. "The Vrask Dominion understands the Council's position. We are prepared to offer a compromise on Korvax 7. Arya translated into the captain's native language, her voice steady and professional, but her attention was divided. Hrokhtar's companion, a younger warrior named Vexril, had just muttered something in Vrask military cant to the 3rd delegate. The words were quiet, nearly subvocal, meant only for Vrask ears. The human understands nothing. Proceed with Phase 2 when the captain signals acceptance. Arya's expression never changed. She continued translating the official negotiation as if she had heard nothing unusual. But her heart rate increased slightly, and her mind began cataloging details. Hrokhtar's left hand rested near a device on his belt. Vexril kept glancing at the conference room's access panel. The 3rd Vrask had positioned himself between the delegation and the door. This was not a negotiation. This was preparation for an assault. Captain Thelnox droned on about territorial boundaries and resource allocation, completely oblivious to the undercurrents in the room. Commander Xiphus seemed more aware, his eyes narrowing occasionally, but he deferred to his captain in all things. The other council officers present were specialists in trade law and xenobiology, not combat or security. Arya made a decision. She needed to alert someone, but any obvious move would trigger whatever the Vrask were planning prematurely. She slowly reached up to adjust her translator earpiece, a common gesture that no one would question. As she did, her fingers brushed against the emergency beacon built into her collar. It was designed to alert security to medical emergencies. She pressed it twice. 2 pulses meant potential threat, not medical crisis. Security personnel trained to read the codes would understand. The question was whether they would arrive in time. "The Council finds these terms acceptable in principle," Captain Thelnox was saying. "We shall draft the formal agreement and reconvene in 4 hours. Hrokhtar's eyes gleamed. "Excellent. However, there is one final matter to discuss, a matter of some delicacy." His hand moved fractionally closer to the device on his belt. The door to the conference room opened. A security officer entered. a Dralaxian whose bulk nearly filled the doorway. "Captain, my apologies for the interruption. We have detected an irregularity in the docking bay where the Vrask shuttle is secured." It was a lie, Arya realized. The security officer had received her signal and created a pretext to enter. She felt a flash of gratitude for whoever had trained the Concordance's security personnel properly. Roktar moved fast. The device was in his hand in an instant and he squeezed it before anyone could react. Arya felt rather than heard the pulse of energy that radiated from the small mechanism. Every electronic system in the room flickered and died. The lights went dark, leaving only emergency strips glowing faintly along the floor. "What is the meaning of this?" Captain Thelnox's voice rose in pitch, the insectoid equivalent of panic. The Vrask were moving in the darkness, their armor suddenly active with energy fields. Arya dropped to the floor as weapons fire lit the room in strobing flashes. The security officer went down first, his body blocking the doorway. Commander Xiphus tried to draw his sidearm but was struck by a stunning blast that left him twitching on the floor. Arya rolled under the conference table, her training from another life taking over. She had 3 seconds, maybe 4, before the Vrask secured the room. Her hand found the emergency kit mounted beneath the table's edge. Every conference room had one, a relic of more dangerous times that most species never expected to need. She pulled out the chemical flare and cracked it, flooding the room with brilliant red light. The Vrask hissed, their eyes adapted to darkness now suddenly blinded. Arya threw the flare toward Roktar and ran for the security officer's fallen body. She grabbed his weapon, a plasma pistol that felt heavy and awkward in her hands. She had trained on similar models, but that was years ago. The ship shuddered. Somewhere nearby, explosions echoed through the hull. The Vrask had not come alone. Their ships were attacking the Concordance. Roktar recovered his vision and pointed at Arya. "Kill the human. She is irrelevant." Arya raised the plasma pistol. Her hands were steady despite the chaos. "I'm a lot of things," she said quietly. "But irrelevant isn't one of them." She fired twice. The first shot went wide, her muscle memory not quite accurate enough. The second hit Vexril's shoulder, sending the warrior spinning. The third Vrask charged at her and she knew she would not get another shot in time. The ship shuddered again, harder this time. Alert klaxons began wailing throughout the Concordance. Captain Thelnox was shouting something incomprehensible, his panic complete. The bridge crew would be overwhelmed within minutes if the Vrask attack was coordinated properly. Arya Chen looked at the chaos around her and felt something cold settle in her chest. She had come to the stars to leave violence behind, to use her skills with languages to build bridges instead of targeting solutions. But the galaxy, it seemed, had other plans. She tapped her communications badge, hoping the localized pulse had not reached the bridge systems. "This is Interpreter Chen to all stations. We are under attack. The Vrask delegation has turned hostile." A voice crackled back, distorted by interference. "Chen, this is the bridge. Captain Thelnox is not responding to hails. We have multiple Vrask warships closing on our position. Our weapons are offline. We're defenseless." Arya closed her eyes for just 1 second. When she opened them, the woman looking out was not a simple interpreter anymore. She was something the peaceful galaxy had forgotten could exist. "Bridge, stand by. I'm coming to you." She stepped over the fallen security officer and walked into the corridor, plasma pistol in hand, while behind her the Vrask regrouped and Captain Thelnox whimpered in the darkness. The corridors of the Concordance were filled with smoke and the acrid smell of melted metal. Emergency lighting painted everything in shades of red and amber. Arya moved quickly but carefully, the plasma pistol held low and ready. She had grown up reading about soldiers, had even pretended to be one as a child. Later, she had become one for real. But that was supposed to be finished, buried in Earth's past along with so many other things humanity preferred not to advertise. 2 crew members ran past her, a Delphian engineer and a Corthan technician, both wild-eyed with fear. They barely registered her presence. To them, she was still just the human interpreter, hardly worth noticing even in a crisis. Arya's communicator crackled. "All hands, this is the bridge. Multiple hull breaches on decks 7 through 9. Vrask boarding parties have been detected. Security teams respond immediately." The voice was not Captain Thelnox. It was Commander Xiphus, and he sounded badly shaken. That was not good. If the calm, methodical second officer was rattled, the situation was worse than she had thought. She reached an access terminal and pressed her palm against it. The screen flickered to life, showing a ship schematic covered in red warning indicators. The Vrask had planned this well. Their initial electromagnetic pulse had disabled weapons and shields. Their ships were now surrounding the Concordance like predators around wounded prey. Boarding craft were attached to the hull in 6 locations. Arya pulled up the command roster. Captain Thelnox was listed as inactive, possibly injured or in shock. Commander Xiphus had assumed command, but his location was showing as Medical Bay 4. He was wounded trying to coordinate from a hospital bed. The other senior officers were scattered, cut off from each other by the boarding parties. This was going to get everyone killed. Arya accessed another section of the ship's database, one she had looked at only once before out of curiosity. Human Integration Protocols, the file was called. It had been included in her orientation materials 6 months ago. A dry document full of legal language and bureaucratic organization. She had skimmed it, finding nothing interesting, and forgotten about it. Now she read it carefully. Section 7, Subsection 4. In circumstances where standard command hierarchy is compromised, incapacitated or otherwise unable to function, human personnel with designated military credentials may invoke Emergency Protocol Theta. Upon proper authentication, such personnel are authorized to assume tactical command for the duration of the crisis. Arya stared at the words. She had not thought about her military credentials in 3 years. After the corporate wars ended, after Mars finally signed the peace accords, she had resigned her commission in the Earth Strategic Defense Force. She had gone back to university, studied linguistics and xenopsychology, tried to become someone who built peace instead of managing violence. But the Galactic Council kept extensive records. When Earth had applied for membership, every human candidate had undergone deep background checks. Her service record was in the Council database, sealed but accessible. The file listed her rank as commander, her specialization as tactical coordination and combat linguistics. The Council had known what she was. They had known and they had accepted her anyway. More than that, they had written this protocol specifically to account for people like her. She tapped through the authentication sequence, entering codes she had not used in years. Her old military identification number, her biometric signature, a command phrase in Mandarin that only ESDF officers knew. The terminal beeped. A new message appeared across every screen on the bridge, in command, in security, in every department of the ship. Emergency Protocol Theta activated. Commander Arya Chen, ESDF, has assumed tactical command of GCS Concordance under Human Integration Protocol 7-4. All personnel acknowledge and comply. Arya took a deep breath. There was no going back now. She opened a shipwide channel. This is Commander Chen. I have operational command until this crisis is resolved. All department heads report your status immediately. The responses came quickly, confusion mixing with desperation. The crew did not understand what was happening, but they were too terrified to question it. A Velaran engineering chief asked if this was a joke. A Corthan security lieutenant demanded to know by what authority she was giving orders. A Delphian medical officer simply asked what she needed. This is no joke, Arya said, her voice cutting through the chaos. Captain Thelnox is incapacitated. Commander Xiphus is wounded. I am the ranking officer capable of coordinating our defense. You can check my credentials in the system, or you can trust me for the next hour and maybe survive. Your choice. Silence followed. Then Commander Xiphus's voice came through, weak but clear. I have reviewed the protocol. Commander Chen's authority is legitimate. All personnel will comply with her orders. That broke the dam. Reports started flooding in. 17 dead, 43 wounded. Weapons offline. Shields at 0. Vrask boarding parties on 6 decks. Life support compromised in multiple sections. The Concordance was dying and everyone knew it. Arya pulled up tactical maps and began issuing orders with a speed that surprised even herself. Engineering, I need you to reroute all available power to decks 4 and 5. Strip it from everywhere else if you have to. Security, fall back to defensive positions around the bridge and engineering. Abandon the outer decks. Medical, prepare for mass casualties and start moving the wounded to the central core. A Velaran tactical officer objected. Commander, if we abandon the outer decks, the Vrask will have free access to areas we cannot defend. Arya interrupted. They have the numbers and the equipment. We consolidate, we survive. We spread out, we die. Move now. The officer obeyed, his multifaceted eyes wide with something that might have been fear or respect. Arya's hands moved across the terminal, pulling up information she had not looked at in years. Starship combat theory, boarding action countermeasures, improvised weapon systems. It all came flooding back, muscle memory and training that had never really left her. She accessed the Concordance's design specifications. The ship was a diplomatic vessel, not a warship, but every ship in space had potential weapons if you knew where to look. The communications array could be overcharged to emit electromagnetic pulses. The cargo bay doors could be explosively decompressed. The reactor's coolant system could be weaponized. Engineering, I'm sending you a priority list of modifications. I know they look strange. Do them anyway. The Delphian engineer's voice came back, hesitant. Commander, some of these modifications could damage the ship permanently. The ship is already damaged. I'm just changing what kind of damage we're willing to accept. She brought up the external camera feeds. The Vrask warships hung in space around them, sleek and predatory. Their weapons were aimed but not firing. They wanted the Concordance intact, probably to strip its databases and use it for propaganda. That gave her an advantage. They would be cautious about causing critical damage. Arya opened a private channel to Commander Xiphus. Commander, I need you to do something for me. Anything, Commander Chen. Stop calling me Commander. That rank is human military, not council. But I need you to trust me anyway. Can you do that? There was a pause. When Xiphus spoke again, his voice was steady despite his pain. I misjudged you, Interpreter Chen. I think many of us did. Yes, I trust you. Good. Because what I'm about to do is going to seem completely insane. She closed the channel and addressed the ship again. All hands, in 60 seconds I'm going to vent atmosphere from the outer hull sections. Emergency bulkheads will seal automatically. Anyone still in those areas after the countdown needs to get to safety now. This is not a drill. Panic erupted on several channels. Officers shouted questions and objections. Arya ignored them all and started the countdown. She watched the crew positions on her display, saw them retreating inward, and felt a grim satisfaction that at least they were listening. At 0, she triggered the venting sequence. The outer sections of the Concordance opened to space. Atmosphere rushed out in massive plumes, carrying debris, equipment, and anything not secured. She watched the external cameras and saw Vrask boarding parties caught in the explosive decompression, their armored bodies tumbling into the void. It was not enough to stop them all, but it bought time. All teams prepare for secondary assault. The Vrask will be angry now. They'll push harder. Hold the defensive lines at all costs. A young Korthan officer, barely more than a cadet, spoke up. Commander Chen, what happens if we cannot hold? Arya checked the tactical display again. The Vrask ships were moving closer, preparing to send more boarding parties. Her improvised defenses would delay them, maybe for an hour, maybe for 2. But eventually the Concordance would fall, unless she changed the rules of the engagement. If we cannot hold, Arya said quietly, then we make them regret ever attacking us in the first place. She began typing new commands into the system, pulling up files that made the crew members watching gasp in shock. These were not defensive measures. These were attack plans. The interpreter was done talking. The soldier had come home. The bridge of the Concordance was chaos organized by desperation. Officers shouted status reports while screens flashed warnings in a dozen different colors. Arya stood at the central command console, her hands moving across holographic displays with practiced efficiency. Around her, the crew worked with frantic energy, following orders from a woman most of them had never considered important until 30 minutes ago. Vrask boarding party breaching Deck 5. Section 9, a Velaran security officer reported. Route them toward the cargo bay, Arya said without looking up. Then seal bulkheads behind them. I want them isolated. Commander, that cargo bay contains our medical supplies, not anymore. I had them moved 10 minutes ago. Now it contains a surprise. She pulled up the cargo bay controls and waited. The display showed Vrask heat signatures entering the large space, spreading out in tactical formation. They were good, she had to admit. Well-trained, disciplined, moving like professional soldiers. But they had made one mistake. They had expected to fight diplomats and scientists, not someone who understood how soldiers thought. Arya triggered the cargo bay's industrial loading system. Massive magnetic clamps designed to move multi-ton containers activated at full power. The Vrask warriors, wearing armor loaded with metal components, found themselves yanked in different directions as the magnetic field seized their equipment. Some slammed into walls. Others collided with each other. The organized assault team became a tangle of confused, disoriented fighters. Security, move in now. Take them while they're disorganized. The security teams, positioned and ready, rushed into the cargo bay. The fight was brief and brutal. Arya watched it on the monitors, her expression neutral. She had learned long ago not to let emotion interfere with necessary violence. Deck 5 secured, the security officer reported, sounding surprised. 17 Vrask captured, 3 dead. Good. Move the prisoners to the brig and post guards. Treat their wounded. We're not barbarians. A new voice cut into the command channel. Commander Chen, this is Engineering Chief Varos. You need to see what we found in the modifications you ordered. Arya pulled up the engineering feed. The Delphian chief's face appeared, her bioluminescent markings pulsing with agitation. Behind her, several engineers were working on what looked like a massive improvised weapon. We rerouted the main communications array like you asked, Varos explained. But when we opened the power conduits, we found something strange. There are military-grade targeting systems built into this ship's framework. Hidden deep in the infrastructure, they're old, dormant, but functional. Arya felt ice run down her spine. Show me the technical specifications. Varos sent the data, and Arya's worst suspicion was confirmed. The Concordance was not just a diplomatic vessel. It had been built on the frame of a military ship, decommissioned after the last major war and converted for peaceful purposes. But the weapon systems had not been removed. They had been disabled, hidden, and forgotten. Someone on the Galactic Council had known. Someone had decided that a diplomatic ship might one day need teeth, and they had left those teeth in place, waiting for someone clever enough to find them. Chief Varos, can you bring those systems online? Maybe. It would take hours, and we would need to bypass about 50 safety protocols. You have 30 minutes. Bypass whatever you need to. Varos's markings flashed in what might have been shock or excitement. Understood, Commander. Arya closed the channel and turned to the tactical officer, a young Korthan named Jexel. Status on the Vrask fleet? 3 warships in close formation, Commander. They're maintaining position at 2,000 kilometers. Weapons charged but not firing. I think they're waiting for their boarding parties to secure the ship. They're going to be waiting a long time. Arya studied the fleet positions on the holographic display. What's our maneuvering capability? Minimal. We have positioning thrusters only. Main engines are offline. Positioning thrusters will work. Helm, I need you to rotate the ship 30 degrees on the vertical axis. Make it look random, like we're tumbling from damage. The helmsman, a nervous Valeran, complied. The Concordance began to turn slowly, its motion appearing uncontrolled. Arya watched the Vrask ships carefully. They adjusted their position slightly but maintained their formation. They suspected nothing. Commander, another boarding party is approaching Deck 7, Jexel reported. Let them dock, then cut the docking clamps and seal the airlock from our side. They can sit in their boarding craft and think about their choices. A grim smile appeared on Jexel's face. Yes, Commander. Arya's communicator chimed. Commander Xiphus appeared on the small screen, his reptilian features pale with pain and blood loss. Commander Chen, I am watching what you are doing. It is remarkable. But I must ask, where did you learn to fight like this? Arya was silent for a moment, memories flooding back. The corporate wars. Mars's red deserts turned to glass by orbital bombardment. Boarding actions in the asteroid belt where survival was measured in seconds. Her hands, younger then, learning to coordinate defense fleets against corporate raiders who cared nothing for human life. My people had some disagreements before we joined the council, she said finally. I was involved in resolving them. Disagreements. Xiphus made a sound that might have been a laugh. Your species has a gift for understatement. What were you before you became an interpreter? I commanded a frigate group during the Battle of Phobos Station. Later, I coordinated multi-ship tactics for the Mars Defense Force. I was good at it, Commander. Too good. When the wars ended, I wanted to be something else. Someone who used languages to prevent wars instead of winning them. And yet here you are. Here I am. Arya agreed quietly. Sometimes the universe doesn't care what we want to be. An alarm cut through the conversation. Jexel was shouting, his voice sharp with urgency. Commander, the Vrask flagship is moving. They're closing to weapons range. Arya pulled up the tactical display. The largest Vrask ship, a heavy cruiser bristling with weapons, was accelerating toward them. Its targeting systems were active, painting the Concordance with acquisition locks. "They're done playing," she said. "They're going to destroy us and claim we resisted illegally." "Varos, how long until those weapons are online?" 15 minutes minimum." 15 minutes they did not have. The Vrask cruiser would be in optimal firing position in 3. Arya's mind raced through possibilities, discarding options as quickly as she thought of them. They could not outrun the cruiser. They could not hide. They could not negotiate. The only option was to fight, but with what? Then she saw it. A detail on the engineering schematic that sparked an idea born from desperation and old training. "Varos, forget the weapons for now. I need you to overload the reactor's coolant system and vent it toward the Vrask flagship." "Can you do that?" "Commander, the coolant is superheated plasma contained by magnetic fields. If we vent it, it will dissipate in seconds. I'm not trying to hurt them with the coolant. I'm trying to blind them." Understanding dawned on Varos's face. "The plasma will interfere with their targeting systems. Give us a few minutes of confusion." "Exactly. Do it now." The Concordance shuddered as it expelled a massive cloud of glowing plasma from its underside. The cloud expanded rapidly, a billowing mass of electromagnetic interference that hung between them and the Vrask cruiser. The enemy ship's targeting locks flickered and failed as its sensors struggled to penetrate the plasma screen. "All power to positioning thrusters," Arya ordered. "Rotate the ship to put our strongest hull sections toward the enemy. Evacuate all personnel from the port side. Emergency crews prepare for impact." The crew scrambled to obey. Some of them were crying, Arya noticed. Some were praying to gods she had never heard of. But they all moved with purpose, trusting her because they had no other choice. The Vrask cruiser emerged from the plasma cloud, weapons blazing. Energy beams tore through space, slamming into the Concordance's hull. Armor plating melted under the assault. Explosions rippled through outer compartments. Alarms screamed as structural integrity warnings flashed across every screen. But the ship held. Barely, desperately it held. "Damage report," Arya said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Hull breaches on decks 8 through 11. Casualties mounting. Life support failing in multiple sections." Jexel's hands were shaking as he read the displays. "Commander, we cannot survive another barrage like that." "We won't have to." Arya opened the channel to engineering. "Varos, status. Weapons coming online now." "But Commander, we only have enough power for 1, maybe 2 shots before the system burns out." "1 shot is all I need. Give me firing control on the bridge." A new console materialized in front of Arya. Holographic displays showing targeting information for weapons that had been sleeping for decades. She studied the Vrask cruiser's position, calculating angles and distances with skills she had hoped never to use again. Her finger hovered over the firing trigger. Around her, the bridge crew had fallen silent, watching her with a mixture of hope and terror. They had no idea who she really was, what she had done before coming to the stars as a peaceful interpreter. They only knew that she was all that stood between them and death. The Vrask flagship reeled from the impact, its shields collapsing in a brilliant cascade of energy. For 3 seconds, the massive warship hung vulnerable in space, its armor exposed and its weapon systems cycling down from the feedback surge. 3 seconds was an eternity in combat, and Arya Chen had learned long ago how to make eternities count. "All remaining power to weapons," she ordered. "Fire everything we have." The Concordance was not a warship, but in that moment it fought like one. Hidden pulse cannons that had not fired in 40 years came to life. Improvised weapons cobbled together from civilian systems added their fury to the barrage. Energy beams, plasma bolts, and kinetic projectiles tore through the void, hammering the Vrask flagship's now naked hull. Explosions blossomed across the enemy ship's surface. Armor plating shattered, atmosphere vented from a dozen breaches. But the flagship was a military vessel, built to absorb punishment, and it was already recovering. Its shields began to regenerate, flickering back into existence in patches. "Commander, their weapons are coming back online," Jexel reported, his voice tight with fear. "We're not going to survive another exchange." Arya studied the tactical display with cold focus. The flagship was wounded but not dead. The 2 escort cruisers were moving to flank positions, preparing to finish what their commander had started. The Concordance had perhaps 90 seconds before overwhelming firepower reduced it to debris. She needed to change the equation. And there was only one way to do that. Open a channel to the Vrask flagship. All frequencies. I want their commander to hear this. The communications officer, a Delphian whose markings pulsed with stress, looked confused but complied. "Channel open, Commander." Arya took a breath and began speaking. But she did not speak in standard Galactic. She spoke in Vrask military cant, the formal battle language used only by their warrior caste. Her accent was perfect, her tone commanding, and every word was chosen for maximum psychological impact. "War Master Hrokhtar, this is Strike Commander Vexnoth. You have failed. The prey vessel has wounded the flagship. Your incompetence has cost us victory. All ships execute tactical dispersal pattern Omega. The humans have reinforcements inbound. Retreat to rally point 7 and await new orders." The bridge crew stared at her in shock. Arya kept her expression neutral, watching the tactical display intently. She had just impersonated a Vrask senior officer, giving orders that contradicted everything Hrokhtar would want to do. The question was whether the confusion would spread fast enough. "Commander, the 2 escort cruisers are breaking formation," Jexel said, disbelief in his voice. "They're moving away from us." It worked. For precious seconds, the Vrask fleet descended into chaos. The escort cruisers, following what they thought were legitimate orders, began withdrawing. The flagship, realizing it was being left alone, transmitted frantic countermands. Commanders shouted contradictory orders. Ships turned in different directions as chain of command collapsed into argument. Arya opened a channel to engineering. "Veros, I need emergency power to the engines. I don't care if it burns them out permanently. We need thrust now. Commander, if I push the engines that hard, we'll get maybe 5 minutes of acceleration before they fail completely. 5 minutes is all I need. Do it." The Concordance lurched forward as its crippled engines roared to life. The ship was not meant for this kind of abuse, and every structural member groaned in protest. Alarms screamed warnings about imminent cascade failures. Arya ignored them all and set a course directly toward the Vrask flagship. "Commander, what are you doing?" Commander Xiphus's voice cut through the chaos, transmitted from the medical bay where he still coordinated damage control. "If we get any closer to that ship, they will tear us apart." "No," Arya said quietly. "They're going to run." She opened the channel to the Vrask ships again, this time speaking standard Galactic. "Vrask vessels, this is Commander Arya Chen of the Galactic Council ship Concordance. You attacked a diplomatic vessel in neutral space. You killed Council personnel. You violated every treaty your Dominion has signed, and now you're going to answer for it." Hrokhtar's voice came back, filled with rage. "You are one damaged ship, human. You have no weapons left. You are already dead?" "Maybe," Arya agreed. "But I'm going to make sure I take you with me." She adjusted course, putting the Concordance on a collision trajectory with the flagship. The distance closed rapidly, and she watched the Vrask ship's reactions carefully. Their weapons were charging, preparing to fire, but there was hesitation in their movements. They had not expected a suicide run. In their culture, surrender was shameful but understood. Deliberate self-sacrifice in a losing battle was something else entirely, something their tactical doctrine did not account for. "All hands. This is Commander Chen. Evacuate to the central core and emergency pods. Prepare for impact in 90 seconds. "Commander, you cannot be serious," Jexel protested. "You're going to ram them?" "I'm going to make them think I will. There's a difference. Now evacuate the bridge." "That's an order." The bridge crew hesitated, looking at each other uncertainly. Then they began to move, filing toward the exits with backward glances at the human who had taken command of their ship and turned it into a weapon. Commander Xiphus's voice came through again. "Commander Chen, I am not evacuating. Whatever you are planning, you will need someone to help coordinate." Arya smiled despite the situation. "Thank you, Commander. I was hoping you would say that." She triggered another systems override, accessing communications protocols that should have been locked away. The Concordance might have been converted to a diplomatic vessel, but its military-grade communications array still had capabilities most of the crew did not know about, including the ability to mimic Vrask command frequencies and encryption patterns. Arya began transmitting on multiple channels simultaneously, creating a cacophony of fake orders, false position reports, and contradictory commands. The Vrask fleet's communications network, already strained by the confusion she had created earlier, began to collapse completely. Ships received orders to attack, to retreat, to hold position, all seemingly from their own commanders. The escort cruisers, now thoroughly confused about what was happening, continued their withdrawal. The flagship found itself alone, facing a damaged but still dangerous opponent that was accelerating directly toward it, with what looked like suicidal determination. Rocktar made his decision. The flagship's engines flared to life and the massive ship began to turn away. "They're running," Jexel said from the doorway, where he had stopped despite Arya's order to evacuate. "The Vrask are actually running." Arya watched the flagship accelerate away, its escort cruisers scrambling to match course. She let them go for 30 seconds, making sure the retreat was genuine. Then she cut power to the engines, letting the Concordance coast. All ships stand down from collision course. Reduce speed to maneuvering thrusters only. The bridge crew, who had not actually evacuated, began returning to their stations. They moved quietly, almost reverently, as if they had just witnessed something they did not quite understand but knew was significant. Arya opened a secure channel. "Varos, status on our weapon systems." "Completely burned out, Commander. We're lucky the ship didn't explode. We won't be firing anything else without major repairs." "Good thing we won't need to." "What about sensors and communications?" "Still functional. Why?" Arya pulled up the tactical display again. The Vrask ships were still fleeing, but they had not jumped to faster-than-light travel yet. They were waiting, probably assessing their damage and arguing about what had just happened. "Because I'm not done with them yet," Arya said. She accessed the communications array one more time, routing through every available channel. What she was about to do violated a dozen regulations about psychological warfare and enemy communications, but she had already violated so many rules today that a few more hardly mattered. "Vrask Fleet, this is Commander Chen. I know you can hear me. I know you're out there wondering what just happened. So let me explain it to you." She paused, letting silence build for dramatic effect. Around her, the bridge crew listened with rapt attention. "You came here expecting to fight diplomats and scientists, soft people who negotiate and compromise. You thought you could take this ship, humiliate the Council, and prove that your dominion is stronger than our laws. But you made one mistake. You forgot that every species in the galaxy has teeth. We just choose when to show them." The tactical display showed the Vrask ships holding position, listening despite themselves. "I am Commander Arya Chen of the Earth Strategic Defense Force. Before I became an interpreter, I coordinated fleet actions during my people's worst wars. I have commanded ships in battle. I have given kill orders. I have watched friends die because my decisions were not fast enough or smart enough or ruthless enough. And when those wars finally ended, I swore I would never do it again." Arya's voice hardened, each word precise and cold. "But you attacked my ship. You killed my crew. You forced me to become something I tried to leave behind. So hear this, Rocktar, and make sure your Dominion understands. This ship is crippled. Our weapons are gone. By every measure, you should have won. But you're the ones running. Remember that. Remember that one human, armed with nothing but a damaged ship and a crew who trusted her, made your entire fleet retreat in shame." She let that sink in for a moment. The Council Station Meridian hung against the stars like a jewel, its massive rings rotating slowly to create artificial gravity for the dozens of species that called it home. The Concordance limped toward it 3 days after the battle, its hull scarred and broken, trailing debris and venting atmosphere from sections that could no longer be sealed. Arya Chen stood on what remained of the observation deck, watching the station grow larger. Around her, repair crews worked to stabilize the ship enough to dock safely. Most of the crew avoided looking at her directly now. She was no longer the forgettable interpreter who stood quietly in corners. She was something else, something that made them uncomfortable even as they respected what she had done. Captain Thelnox had been found alive in the conference room, conscious but completely shut down by shock. The insectoid commander had not spoken a word since being rescued. He simply sat in his quarters staring at nothing, occasionally making small clicking sounds that the medical staff said indicated deep psychological trauma. Commander Xiphus had taken over official command, but everyone knew who really ran the ship now. Arya gave orders and people obeyed, not because regulations required it, but because 3 days ago she had saved their lives and they trusted her in ways they had never trusted their own officers. "Commander Chen, we're receiving priority communication from the Council Tribunal," Jexel reported. "They're requesting your immediate presence upon docking." Arya nodded. She had been expecting this. The Tribunal would want answers, justification, probably a scapegoat for the diplomatic disaster that had become an interstellar incident. She had written her report during the long journey to the station, including every detail of the battle, every order she had given, and every regulation she had violated. Inform them I'll attend as soon as we're secure. And Jexel, thank you. For everything. The young Corthan blinked in surprise. I just followed your orders, Commander. You did more than that. You trusted me when you had no reason to. That matters. The docking process took 2 hours, slowed by the Concordance's damaged hull and uncertain structural integrity. When they finally connected to the station, medical teams rushed aboard to evacuate the wounded. Arya watched them work, mentally counting the casualties again. 23 dead, 57 wounded, some critically. She had kept most of the crew alive, but not all of them. The ones she had lost weighed on her like stones. A delegation was waiting when she disembarked. Not soldiers or security, but a group of council officials in formal robes that indicated high rank. At their center stood an elderly Valeran whose crystalline features were etched with age and wisdom. Arya recognized him from her orientation briefings. Counselor Vexthon, one of the senior members of the tribunal. Commander Chen, Vexthon said formally. You are summoned before the tribunal to give testimony regarding the incident with the Vrask Dominion. Please follow us. Arya fell into step with the delegation, aware of the stares from station personnel as they walked through crowded corridors. News of what had happened was already spreading. A human interpreter who turned out to be a military commander. A diplomatic vessel that fought off Vrask warships. Stories were growing in the telling, becoming legends before the facts were even established. The tribunal chamber was vast and circular, with seats rising in tiers around a central platform. Representatives from 36 species watched as Arya entered. Some looked curious, others hostile, a few frightened. She walked to the center platform with her head high, refusing to show the nervousness that churned in her stomach. Commander Arya Chen of Earth, Vexthon intoned. You stand before the Galactic Council Tribunal to answer questions regarding your actions aboard the GCS Concordance. Do you understand the gravity of this proceeding? I do, Counselor. Then let us begin. You are accused of exceeding your authority, violating ship protocols, conducting unauthorized military operations, and causing an interstellar incident with the Vrask Dominion. How do you respond? Arya had prepared for this moment. She could apologize, express regret, try to minimize what she had done, or she could tell the truth. I saved that ship and its crew, she said clearly. Everything I did was authorized under Human Integration Protocol 7-4. Everything I did was necessary, and I would do it again. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. A Corthan counselor stood, his voice sharp. You turned a diplomatic mission into a military engagement. You threatened the Vrask with future violence. You have damaged relations that took decades to build. Those relations were built on the Vrask believing we were weak, Arya countered. They attacked us because they thought they could. Because they assumed a diplomatic vessel would be helpless. I proved them wrong. By revealing capabilities we deliberately kept hidden. The Corthan counselor snapped. By exposing Earth's military nature to the galaxy. Earth's military nature? Arya let anger creep into her voice. Every species in this chamber has fought wars. The Corthans have orbital defense platforms that can glass a planet. The Valerans developed biological weapons sophisticated enough to target specific genetic markers. The Delphians have stealth ships we're not supposed to know about. But you're angry at humanity for having soldiers? We are angry, Vexthon said quietly. Because you were not supposed to use those skills. That was the agreement. The chamber fell silent. Arya stared at the old counselor, her mind racing. What agreement? Vexthon looked tired, ancient, burdened by secrets. Perhaps it is time to explain. This tribunal is now closed to public record. All observers are dismissed. The gallery began to empty, protesting officials being ushered out by security. Within minutes, only the senior counselors remained, along with Arya standing alone on the central platform. The atmosphere changed, becoming more intimate and far more dangerous. Commander Chen, Vexthon said, what I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest level. It concerns the real reason humanity was admitted to the Galactic Council. Arya waited, her heart pounding. When Earth first applied for membership, we investigated your species thoroughly. We learned about your wars, the corporate wars on Mars, the conflicts over resources in the asteroid belt, the brief but terrible nuclear exchange that scarred your homeworld. We saw your weapons, your tactics, your capacity for violence, and we were afraid. A Delphian counselor took up the narrative, her bioluminescent markings pulsing slowly. The galaxy has been at peace for 2 centuries, Commander. Oh, there are incidents and skirmishes, but nothing like the wars of the past. We have grown soft, comfortable, perhaps foolish. When we discovered humanity, we saw something we had forgotten, a species that still remembered how to fight. We debated for months, Vexthon continued. Some wanted to reject Earth's application, to keep humanity isolated until you evolved past your violent tendencies. Others wanted to study you, perhaps learn from you. But I proposed a different approach. Arya's mind was reeling. You wanted to use us. We wanted to have options, Vexthon corrected gently. The Vrask Dominion has been growing aggressive for years. Other powers in the galaxy watch and wonder if the Council can protect its members. We needed deterrence, but we could not be seen building military capabilities. That would undermine everything the Council represents. So you hid soldiers among the scientists, Arya said, understanding dawning. You scattered humans throughout the fleet. People with military backgrounds but civilian titles. Insurance policies, exactly. We made an agreement with Earth's government. You would be admitted to the Council as a peaceful species. Your people would serve in support roles, using your considerable talents for linguistics, engineering, and science. But we would also place certain individuals with certain skills in positions where they might be needed if the worst happened. A Korthan counselor leaned forward. The protocol you invoked was not an oversight, Commander. It was deliberately written to allow you to do exactly what you did. We just never expected it to be used so soon or so publicly. Arya felt betrayed, used, and angry all at once. So I was what? A weapon you kept in storage? Did you even care about my skills as a translator? Or was that just a convenient cover? You are an excellent translator, Vexthon said firmly. Your academic credentials are genuine, your abilities real. But yes, you were also chosen for your military background, as were 37 other humans currently serving in the Council fleet. Most of them will never need to use their combat skills. You were simply unfortunate enough to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Or the right place, the Delphian counselor added. If you had not been aboard the Concordance, everyone on that ship would be dead. The Vrask would have won a significant victory, and the Council's weakness would have been exposed. Instead, they suffered a humiliating defeat and have agreed to immediate negotiations. Arya's head snapped up. They agreed to negotiate? They did. Vex, though.